May 1945. Germany had already surrendered. The Third Reich lay in ruins, its armies defeated, its cities reduced to rubble. But one of the largest war machines ever constructed by the Nazis, a colossal submarine capable of crossing the Atlantic without surfacing, simply vanished. The U-1229, nicknamed by the Allies as the Submerged City, departed the port of Kiel carrying ultra-secret documents, high-value prisoners, and unknown cargo. It was last seen leaving European waters. It never reached its destination, and decades later, objects began appearing where no map said it could possibly be. This is the story of the submarine that should have surrendered but chose to disappear. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. Admiral Karl Dönitz, who had briefly succeeded Hitler as head of state, issued Order Regenbogen, the Rainbow Order. Every U-boat still at sea was to surface immediately, fly a black flag of surrender, and sail to the nearest Allied port. It was over. The Kriegsmarine, once the terror of the Atlantic, was finished. Hundreds of submarines complied. Their crews emerged from the depths, exhausted, defeated, ready to face whatever came next. But not all of them surfaced. Not all of them surrendered. The U-boats of 1945 were not the same vessels that had hunted convoys in 1940. Technology had evolved dramatically. The Type 21 submarines represented a quantum leap in underwater warfare. They could remain submerged for weeks using revolutionary snorkel technology. They were faster underwater than on the surface, a complete reversal of earlier designs. They were quieter, making them nearly impossible to detect with Allied sonar. They carried more torpedoes, had superior crew quarters, and could dive deeper than anything that came before them. These weren't just submarines. They were underwater cruisers designed to terrorize the Atlantic once again. But Germany surrendered before they could change the war. The submarine in question was not officially listed as a Type 21. Records show something different, something modified, a prototype hybrid reinforced with additional compartments that didn't appear in standard blueprints. Among the German sailors who glimpsed it during construction, it earned a name, Tauchfestung, the diving fortress. Rumors spread through the naval yards at Kiel. Mysterious cargo being loaded under cover of darkness. Scientists boarding with heavy cases. Cryptographers from the Naval Intelligence Section, people who never went to sea, suddenly assigned to submarine duty. Crates with no markings, transported on rail carts in the middle of the night, lifted aboard by crane while armed guards kept everyone at a distance. The last documented order came through encrypted channels on May 6, 2 days before the surrender. Depart for the Atlantic and await radio instructions. The instructions never came, or perhaps they did and no one else was meant to hear them. Allied reconnaissance spotted the massive vessel leaving Kiel Harbor on May 7, moving north through the Baltic. Then it turned west. Then nothing. The signal stopped. The submarine disappeared from every tracking system the Allies had deployed. No distress calls, no final transmissions, no wreckage washing ashore, just silence, the kind of silence that comes when something doesn't want to be found. Naval historians have tried for decades to reconstruct what happened next. The official records simply stop. One day there's a submarine leaving port. The next day it's gone from history. No entry in the surrender logs. No crew members ever identified. No confirmation of sinking. It's as if the ocean simply swallowed it whole and kept the secret. But oceans don't keep secrets forever. The sea always gives something back eventually. And when it did, nothing made sense. If the ocean swallowed the submarine, why did pieces of it reappear decades later, thousands of kilometers from where it should have been? Theory 1. Escape to Argentina. The submarine was attempting to reach Argentina, specifically the Patagonian coast. This wasn't fantasy. Other high-ranking Nazis had used submarine routes to escape to South America. Martin Bormann was rumored to have tried. Adolf Eichmann eventually turned up in Argentina years later. The route existed. U-boats had mapped it. Some officers knew the way. Patagonia offered isolation, German immigrant communities, and governments that might look the other way for the right price. If the U-1229 was carrying Nazi leadership or critical technology, Argentina made sense as a destination. Theory 2. Technology transfer. The submarine was transporting technology and engineers to be used by another nation after the surrender. The Cold War was already beginning before the Hot War ended. Both the Soviet Union and the United States were desperate for German rocket scientists, aircraft designers, and weapons engineers. Operation Paperclip would bring hundreds of Nazi scientists to America. The Soviets did the same. But what if someone else got there first? What if the submarine was heading to make a delivery, to trade technology for safety, to ensure that whatever knowledge it carried wouldn't fall into Allied hands but wouldn't be lost either? Theory 3. Concealing dangerous cargo. The U-1229 was trying to deliver something before the Allies could confiscate it, something that couldn't be documented, something worth more than the lives of everyone aboard. Gold looted from occupied territories. Art treasures stolen from museums and private collections, or perhaps something more dangerous. The Nazis had been working on advanced weapons until the very end: nerve agents, biological research, uranium for atomic programs. If any of these things were aboard, the submarine's disappearance suddenly made more sense. You don't surrender when you're carrying weapons of mass destruction. You hide them, or you sink them, or both. Ocean currents complicated everything. The North Atlantic drift could carry wreckage thousands of kilometers from a sinking site. Depth made searches nearly impossible with 1940s technology. And if any crew members survived whatever happened, they never spoke. Not to journalists, not to historians, not to governments offering immunity for information. The silence was total and deliberate. Intercepted communications from late April and early May 1945 mentioned a priority transport, but they never named the cargo or the destination. Allied codebreakers couldn't crack it. The encryption was different, possibly a variant of Enigma that hadn't been compromised yet. Allied naval forces conducted intensive searches throughout 1945 and 1946. They wanted to find every German submarine. They needed to account for the technology, the crews, the possible weapons still at sea. But they found nothing where the U-1229 should have been. A submarine of that size doesn't simply vanish. It displaces too much water. It leaves a wake. It needs to refuel eventually, surface for air, make contact with supply ships or shore stations. Unless the crew wanted it to disappear. Unless vanishing was always the mission. Then in 1958, something appeared where nothing should exist. Icelandic fishermen hauling nets off the northeastern coast brought up something that didn't belong in the Atlantic. A steel cylinder roughly a meter long, covered in marine growth but still recognizable. German markings, partially corroded but visible. A date stamped into the metal, 1945. They brought it ashore, unsure what they'd found. Experts examined it. The markings identified it as part of a ventilation system, specifically, the advanced snorkel apparatus used in late-war U-boats. More specifically, it matched the unique configuration of the prototype hybrid submarines. The same configuration as the U-1229, but Iceland was nowhere near the projected route. If the submarine had been heading to Argentina, why were parts of it showing up in the far North Atlantic? The discovery raised more questions than answers. Maritime officials quietly filed reports. Naval historians took note, but no major search operation was launched. The Cold War was intensifying. Resources were focused on Soviet submarines, not Nazi ghosts. The cylinder was cataloged and stored. The mystery remained. In 1972, Norwegian technical divers exploring deep wrecks for salvage operations found something else. Breathing masks, corroded but intact, designed for emergency submarine escape. The design was German, late war, advanced. Near them, metal plates with serial numbers that, when traced through surviving records, corresponded to the same vessel. But this discovery was 1,000 kilometers from where the first cylinder had been found. Either the ocean currents were doing impossible things, or the submarine had traveled a route that made no strategic sense. Why would a vessel heading to South America end up leaving debris scattered across the North Atlantic? The 1972 finds disappeared into archives. The Norwegian government didn't publicize them. Neither did NAME, which was briefed on the discovery. Someone decided the information wasn't relevant anymore, or perhaps that it was too relevant to share. The divers were asked to sign confidentiality agreements. They complied. The Cold War had rules, and sometimes those rules meant old secrets stayed buried. Then came 1994. A seismic research vessel conducting surveys for oil exploration was mapping the ocean floor off the coast of Greenland. The region was considered strategically useless, too deep for drilling with existing technology, too remote for shipping lanes. But the sonar detected something massive, a metallic object roughly 70 meters long resting at a depth of 300 meters. The shape was unmistakable, a submarine, and not just any submarine. The size and configuration matched the U-1229 exactly. The sonar images were remarkably clear. The hull appeared intact. No obvious damage, no indication of catastrophic failure. It was simply sitting on the ocean floor as if it had been gently placed there. The research team reported the finding to Danish authorities. Since the discovery was in waters near Greenland, the information was classified within days. No salvage operation was proposed, no investigation announced, and most tellingly, German government documents related to the U-1229 were sealed for 50 years from the date of discovery. Something about that submarine, even half a century after the war ended, was still considered too sensitive for public knowledge. What could be inside a submarine that would justify international silence for 50 years? Reconstruction of events requires piecing together fragments from various sources, many declassified only recently, some still partially redacted. Intelligence reports from the final days of the war mention unusual activity at Kiel. Personnel who shouldn't have been anywhere near submarines were photographed boarding the vessel. Cryptographers from Naval Intelligence Headquarters in Berlin. 2 scientists identified as part of the Advanced Propulsion Research Program. And something else, something that appeared in multiple reports from different sources. Lead line crates, heavy enough to require transport by reinforced rail carts, loaded aboard in the pre-dawn hours of May 6. Lead lining meant radiation shielding. In 1945, that meant one of several possibilities: radioactive materials for research medical isotopes, though submarines weren't hospitals or uranium. The Nazis had been working on atomic weapons, though they were far behind the Manhattan Project. But they had uranium. They had mines in occupied Czechoslovakia, and they knew the war was ending. If you can't use the uranium yourself, you don't let your enemies have it either. Other possibilities emerged from decoded communications and post-war interrogations. Experimental propulsion systems using electromagnetic principles. The Nazis had explored some genuinely advanced concepts, even if they couldn't make them work before the war ended. New encryption codes, upgrades to Enigma that the Allies hadn't cracked yet. If these codes fell into Allied hands, any remaining Nazi intelligence networks would be completely compromised. Better to sink them than surrender them. Then there was the prosaic but historically common possibility: gold. Enormous amounts of gold looted from central banks across occupied Europe. Artworks, priceless artifacts stolen from museums, private collections, Jewish families. The Nazis had stolen everything they could carry. As the war collapsed, that stolen wealth needed to go somewhere. Some of it was hidden in mines and caves. Some was smuggled out through Switzerland. And some, according to persistent rumors, went as sea. The submarine seemed configured not for combat but for concealment. The extra compartments, the reinforced structure, the selection of crew members skilled in evasion rather than attack, all pointed to a vessel designed to disappear. If the objective was to hide something forever, then the disappearance itself was mission accomplished. You don't accidentally hide a 70-meter submarine. That takes planning, intent, and the cooperation of everyone aboard. But why hide a submarine forever? Why not retrieve the cargo later when it's safe? The answer might be that retrieval was never the plan. Perhaps the cargo was so dangerous, so compromising, so valuable that leaving it at the bottom of the ocean was the safest option for everyone involved. Or perhaps the people who knew where it was all died before they could tell anyone else. Submarines are complicated machines. If something goes wrong at 300 meters depth, there's no escape. The crew goes down with the ship. Naval archaeologists who analyzed the 1994 sonar data noticed something crucial. The hull showed no damage from combat, no torpedo strikes, no depth charge deformations, no collision damage. Whatever happened to the U-1229, it wasn't sunk by Allied forces. The submarine appeared to have descended deliberately under control and simply stopped, as if the crew had sealed the compartments from inside, opened the ballast tanks, and let the ocean in. A controlled scuttling, a burial at sea, self-inflicted. Modern theories attempt to explain this. Theory 1, collective suicide to protect contents. The crew knew what they were carrying. They knew it couldn't fall into enemy hands. When capture seemed inevitable, or when their mission became impossible, they chose to sink the submarine themselves, ensuring the cargo would remain hidden forever. This wasn't unprecedented. U-boat crews had scuttled their vessels before when surrender seemed imminent, but usually they did it in shallow water, giving themselves a chance to escape. The U-1229 went down in 300 meters. Nobody was swimming away from that. Theory 2, crew evacuation after cargo transfer. Perhaps the submarine rendezvoused with another vessel, a fishing trawler or merchant ship. The cargo was moved under cover of darkness. The submarine, now empty of anything valuable but still potentially revealing, was scuttled. The crew dispersed, taking new identities, vanishing into post-war chaos. This theory explains why the hull is intact and why nobody ever came forward. Dead men tell no tales, but men with new lives in new countries also stay quiet. Theory 3, other government involvement. Perhaps the submarine did make contact after the war ended. Perhaps it was intercepted not by Allied forces but by someone else, the Soviets maybe, or even Allied intelligence operating off the books. The cargo was confiscated, the submarine deliberately hidden, and everyone involved signed agreements that kept them silent for life. The Cold War created many secrets. Some of them involved cooperation with former enemies when it served larger strategic purposes. If the U-1229's cargo was valuable enough, pragmatism would override justice. No final proof exists for any of these theories. The submarine remains where the sonar found it in 1994, visible to modern scanning technology but never retrieved. Several factors explain why. The depth makes salvage expensive and dangerous. The location is remote, far from any port facilities that could support a major recovery operation. And perhaps most importantly, multiple governments seem content to leave it alone. When Denmark proposed a limited archaeological survey in 2003, the request was quietly denied by international maritime authorities. No explanation was provided. The file was closed. Some stories of war end in victory parades and monuments. Others end in trials and justice. But some stories don't end at all. They just sink deeper into silence. The U-1229 sits at the bottom of the North Atlantic. Its hull intact, its contents unknown, its crew long dead or vanished beyond finding. Whatever secrets it carried in May 1945 remain sealed inside, protected by 300 meters of cold, dark water and the decisions of governments that prefer some questions stay unanswered. Technology exists today to recover the submarine. Deep-sea submersibles could reach it. Robotic vehicles could enter the hull, photograph the interior, retrieve documents or cargo. But nobody has authorized the mission. Nobody seems to want those answers, which suggests the answers might be more dangerous than the mystery. Sometimes war doesn't end when the guns fall silent. Sometimes it continues, hidden and cold at the bottom of the sea. The U-1229 represents something larger than one submarine or one crew. It represents all the things that were lost, hidden, or deliberately buried as the old world collapsed and the new one emerged. We tell ourselves history is knowable, that eventually all secrets surface. But the ocean keeps what it's given, and some secrets, it seems, are meant to stay in the dark. History doesn't repeat, it hides. Subscribe to WW2 Documenta because the next story might be one you'll wish you hadn't missed.